Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second session of the Start Your Career the Right Way learning series. In this session on career navigation and leadership development, you will be learning how to navigate career uncertainties with confidence, understanding leadership competencies tailored for young public servants, learning about essential skills and knowledge needed to excel in your roles, learning how to expand your professional network, uncover consolidated information on relevant training and workshops, and exploring avenues for micromissions and assignment opportunities, and exploring the possibilities for improving your language skills, which you can see up on the slide currently. So please note that this session is being offered in English. The French session will be taking place from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. today. Veuillez noter que cette session est offerte en anglais seulement. La session de français aura lieu de 14h30 à 15h30 aujourd'hui. You can also view recordings of all our Fin learning sessions, including part one of this series, on our YouTube page. So I'd just like to begin by acknowledging that I'm here on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin people have lived on this land since time immemorial, and I encourage you all to acknowledge the land that you're on as well. As we move through today's session, please share your questions by using the Q&A button that's located at the bottom of the screen. You can vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. And as with all Fin sessions, this will be recorded, so you can go back and check out the recording and podcast series at a later date. We'd also like to note that the PowerPoint presentation for each session is included on our wiki page so that you can feel free to follow along at your own rate and to improve your learning experience. Also, all the resources shared during this presentation will be added to our wiki page under the resources tab. So my name is Sydney Burns, and I will be your moderator for this session. I am a policy analyst at Health Canada by trade, and I'm also the co-chair of the National Capital Region Young Professionals Network. It's a pleasure, absolutely, to be with you all. And before we get started, we do have a couple of quick polling questions. Just note, these aren't mandatory and it's not a test, but we do ask for your honesty so that we can gauge your knowledge at this time. So the first polling question is, how would you rate your knowledge of leadership competencies in general? 1, little, being little to no knowledge at all. 2, being little to no knowledge at all. 3 is average. 4 is above average knowledge. And 5 is expert. Question number 2 is, have you shared your career aspirations with your manager? Your options are yes, and they were supportive. Yes, but it was very productive. No, I haven't had the conversation yet. And no, I don't think it's necessary. So we'll just give you a few moments to fill that out, and then we will continue. All right, so we can see here that the knowledge of leadership competencies in general, about 60% of you said it's average, 22% with little to no knowledge, 16% above average, and only 1% said expert. So hopefully today's session will be helpful for you. And in terms of the second question, have you shared your career aspirations with your manager? Yes, and they were very supportive, was responded by 47% of people. That's excellent, so great to hear. And even another 8% said yes, but it was very productive. 43% of you haven't had that conversation yet, so do consider, and hopefully today's session will give you some good tips and tricks on how to do that. And then 2% said no, I don't think it's necessary. So thank you all for your honesty. I'd now like to introduce the panelists that we are very fortunate to have joined us today. So next slide, please. So first off, we have Bridget Gautam. She is currently working at the Departmental Liaison for the Public Health Agency of Canada. And prior to this role, she worked at FedDev Ontario, managed COVID-19 response programs during the pandemic, and held various senior advisor positions across the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Since 2010, Bridget has sought out new opportunities that inspire and challenge her as a public servant. She has experience in policy, cabinet affairs, audit, corporate governance, program management, and administrative services. She's a generalist with a passion for diversity and inclusion, engaging with others and contributing to the bigger picture. Welcome, Bridget. Next up, we have Dima Salame. She is a human resources professional with over 20 years of experience, particularly in the field of labor relations, where she spent a big part of her career supporting managers and leaders navigate HR sensitive issues and complex issues. She is an accredited associate integral coach certified through Integral Coaching Canada, widely recognized as one of the world's most comprehensive and effective human development training programs. Last fall, she took a leap of faith and launched her own coaching practice, coaching executives in personal and leadership development. She's currently working with Fisheries and Oceans Canada with the Chief Digital Officer sector, coaching executives and building their leadership development program. And last but certainly not least, we have Jean Aucoin, who joined the Pay Center in February 2021 as Director of Pay Operations. Jean's responsibilities include ensuring pay services to many client departments, as well as executive services, the Hardship Response Unit, and Escalations Coordination Team. Jean had a variety of leadership roles with the human resources community prior to his arrival at the Pay Center. He gained extensive experience in both corporate and operational settings with expertise in a wide range of human resource management disciplines. Jean began his career in human resources with Correctional Services Canada in 2006, where he served in many different HR advisory roles until 2016, when he became the Regional Manager of Labor Relations. In 2018, Jean joined the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency as Director of HR Centre of Expertise. He was responsible for key HR portfolios and led a number of important initiatives focusing on equipping and modernizing people management in the agency. Jean has a bachelor's degree in business administration from the Université de Moncton and a diploma in human resource management from NBCC. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. So I don't want to waste any time. I'm going to pass it immediately over to Dima to talk about career navigation. Over to you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's so good to be here and to be able to have a conversation about career navigation and leadership development. I think it's a very important conversation that's definitely worth dedicating time and effort to. I would like to start by telling you a little bit about how I've navigated my career so far, and I'll keep it very, very short, I promise. After graduating from university, I left Canada and I lived abroad for a few years. And when I came back to Canada, I decided I wanted a job in the government. And back then, I didn't really give it a lot of thought. I think I was just mainly looking for stability and security. And by accident, I fell on a job as an assistant in human resources in the federal public service. And at the time, the contract was for 3 weeks only. And here I am, 22 years later, I'm still working for the federal government. And after doing a few assignments in various HR disciplines, I switched to labor relations, where I spent the majority of my career. And I also fell on labor relations by accident. At the time, I had a job offer with a department, and one of the directors who knew me offered me a job in labor relations to try to keep me at her department, and it worked. And I was lucky enough that I really enjoyed being in labor relations. I truly loved it, and I stayed in LR for 15 years. And I moved up the ladder from junior advisor to senior advisor, and then from manager to director. And throughout all these years, and if I'm being totally honest, I never really stopped to ask myself why I am doing this work. Why do I want to move up? And I think I was simply moving up because I thought that is what I was supposed to do. Until last winter, I had to be on sick leave for almost 6 months because at the time I had the symptoms of all the symptoms of a professional burnout. And without going through all the details of that journey, for me personally, it took a major crisis in my life to stop and reflect on what I really wanted from my career. And during that time, like said in my bio, this is when I decided to launch my coaching business. And this is like was the only time where I really stopped and reflected what I wanted from my career. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is that the really first step to navigating your career is getting to know yourself. It's really important to take the time to reflect what you enjoy, what you're good at, and what you want to become. And today I would like to share with you some insights on how you go about this. The first thing that you need to do is to unplug from the autopilot. Don't just go through the motions of going to work, doing the job, and apply for the next promotion or apply for the next assignment without really reflecting on what makes you happy. We usually uh, bounce around from one position to another, hoping to find something that makes us happy. And unfortunately, schools and universities, they don't offer a lot of space for reflection. So we are often stuck with choices we made when we were teenagers or very young adults. But we need to stop and ask ourselves, like, who we are, what we want, what do we find fulfilling? And some questions that are helpful to ask yourself is, do you enjoy helping people? Are you motivated if you have freedom and autonomy? What kind of environment you want to work in? What kind of coworkers would you like to work on? And the second thing that's really important to um, stop and reflect on is, what are your core values? What are your core beliefs? Like, really take the time and ask yourself, what's important to me? What do I stand for? What is the perfect team? What are the kind of qualities of the people that what I want to work with? Or what kind of culture and atmosphere that I want to work in? And try really to not get too attached to the shiny things. Like, don't get too attached to the title, the status, even the money. So focus really on what brings you joy and what's important to you. And forget about the title. Think more about what are the day-to-day tasks. Sometimes the title of a position seems very interesting and very appealing, and the job from the outside looks very appealing, but you need to really think about what are the daily tasks, because this is where you spend most of your time, and we spend a lot of our time, precious time, doing these tasks. So make sure that you enjoy the day-to-day task, and don't take a job that you hate so that you build your resume and you say, oh, it will look good on my resume, it's okay if I did it. I think you will end up miserable if you don't really stop and think about, no, this is what I enjoy and this is what brings me joy, and that's why I want to do this job. The other thing that I also would like you to reflect on is, so much sometimes focus too much on our weaknesses and what we're not good at. And I think it would be a lot more beneficial if we focused on what we're really good at, what energizes us. Because when we find something that we're good at and brings us joy, we excel at it naturally, and we inspired to become even better and to improve every day, because we're doing something that's important to us and that's bringing us value, and we this in this way will have more impact because we're doing work that is meaningful to us. Also, one thing that I wanted to highlight today is that it's okay to change your mind too. Sometimes we start a career, let's say in human resources, and we get so comfortable in a certain discipline, or we get too comfortable sometimes that we're afraid to try something else. But if something is calling you, if you're interested in something, don't be scared to change your mind. And going up and becoming senior is not the only way. You can move laterally, you can try a few new things, you can try different things, because it's totally normal that throughout our career we we change. We change what we value sometimes, we change what we want most. So it's okay to have an open mind and try new things. And don't be scared to be a beginner in anything that you do, because this is the only way that you really grow and you learn more. Before I finish my slide, I want to touch very quickly on the conversation with the manager. I think if you really focus on what's important to you and you know what you believe in and what you value, any conversation becomes a lot easy, a lot easier, because you're rooted in your values and you're rooted in what's important to you in your career. Then you become a lot more comfortable having this conversation with your manager. And then you're able to communicate to your manager why an opportunity is important to you. And because you don't need to convince yourself anymore, you're convinced. When we can't convince ourselves of something, then obviously we can't convince others. But if you're convinced of your choice or the next step in your career, it becomes a lot more easier to have that conversation with your manager. Also, it's very helpful if you try to align your goals with the organization goals. So take a step back, look at the big picture, and ask yourself the question, how is this assignment or this career change that's going to help the organization in the short, medium, and long term? Usually that makes you a lot more prepared to have the conversation. Also, be part of the solution when you're speaking to your manager. Be flexible about who's the timing of you leaving, who you're going to train, get them familiar with your workload before you leave. Don't just go to your manager and say, I need to change and I want to change. Just be part of the solution as well. And sometimes when you offer options to your manager, they will be a lot more open minded to help you move with your career. Also, be open to their feedback. Sometimes they do, not sometimes, most of the time actually, they do have very important insights and suggestions to better help you with the assignment opportunity. Your managers have a different perspective of you. They've shown you work, they've seen you perform. So have an open mind. And sometimes even if you're serious about leaving, it doesn't mean that your manager is not serious about keeping you. So have an open mind. Sometimes a conversation about a new opportunity somewhere else might open a new opportunity for you with the same team, with the same manager. So if I want to leave you with really one final thought is, keep an open mind and don't be afraid to try new things. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you so much, Dima. Definitely a lot of really great nuggets in that, and I'm sure there'll be some really great questions on it. But if I had any key takeaways, that communication is key and be true to yourself. So reflection is key, folks. So keep that in mind as more questions come up. But with that, I want to keep us moving. So I'll pass it over to Bridget to talk about language skills development.
Great. No, thank you so much, Sydney. And thank you, Dima. I think you touched on some really great points. And I think a lot of the experience that you spoke to really just comes with time. You won't know all these things in that first, 2 or 3 years as you're starting. But as you navigate your way through organizations, as you have different types of managers, there's some really, really amazing, strong managers out there. And then there are some that you probably will not quite connect with in the same space. So just really, really great, way to kind of just get to learn the way that we operate in the federal government. It's really just time and giving yourself the space that you need to uncover everything that you have. There are a few things I just wanted to quickly touch on. There are so many different ways to move around the government. There's micro missions, assignments, secondments. I think during the pandemic, a lot of us, including myself, took on some really challenging roles that were outside maybe of our comfort zone because we felt a calling to kind of step up and do something that was maybe a little bit outside of your space. So don't be afraid to approach those smaller opportunities to kind of really drive, your what you can, learn about yourself and learn what really does speak to you as a career. There's also a really, great way we think about boxes here in the government and what's my box and what's so important about my title and my box and my language and those are just things that describe what you do, but they don't actually mean everything. And not one box in every organization is the same. I think that would be a really important message for most of the people here to understand is, an AS3 in one organization might not even be the same as an AS3 in another, and same with an EC or PM or a CR or IS. There's so many different ways to interpret the same type of job. And I think a lot of times we think about an organization and think, oh, this is what I love, this is what I know. But have you ever explored something else? Have you ever kind of gone out there and seen what there might be out there? So I think that's something to kind of really keep in mind is, not all jobs are created the same. Not all managers are created the same. Not all colleagues are created the same. So just kind of really, get to know what you do like, and don't be afraid to take a step and take a leap to kind of advocate for yourself, as it says on the slide here, and just use your networks, meet people. That's one of the best ways to kind of move through the government. I think I've worked for 5 different organizations over the span of my career. Left one, came back. So I think there's really some really great ways to move. It's just, finding those opportunities and putting yourself out there. I will also quickly touch base on the official languages. I know a lot of people do struggle kind of getting the support to go into official languages. And you need to be a supervisor, you need to be bilingual, which is super, super important. So some really key quick strategies is invest in yourself. Sometimes in order to get your employer to, commit to, investing in you and sending you on language training is to go out and do your own kind of language development. You can set some dedicated time with all of your colleagues, maybe one meeting every week. You do it in French to kind of get yourself familiar. Go out there and introduce yourself to some francophone colleagues, or kind of create a little network where you can have an open, safe space to kind of just test out how you are and kind of where you sit with your language development. There's so many great resources out there for official languages. As you can see on the slide, GC Campus has some really great ones. Take a look at some of the apps that we have. They're really great. And a lot of the really good ways is just advocate for yourself along the way. Make sure that your manager knows and you're very clear with your expectations. Sometimes, and I think the poll, that career aspirations poll was really interesting. Almost half of people had never had a conversation with their manager about their career aspirations. Official languages is very much the same. If you're striving to kind of get to your levels and get to where you need to be, it's really important to kind of advocate and make sure that's written down and documented so that they know, you're putting in the time, you're putting in the effort, and you're really ready to make that next step and get your levels. And that will also help you move around. I think it's been very beneficial for me personally in my career. And I hope that everyone eventually gets those great opportunities and are not limited by it. So I think that's it. Sydney, I'll turn it back to you. I think we've covered a lot on these first 2 slides here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Bridget. And again, I think to your point, moving around in government is very key to experiencing new things. And we'll talk a little bit more about other ways that you can do it without just your substantive, but to get additional experience. But advocating for yourself is something I learned very early as a young professional, because while your manager may or may not have your best interests in mind, hopefully they do, you ultimately know what you need and what you should strive for, or what your interests are. And just having open communication and those conversations can be really beneficial. So thank you so much for those. And last but certainly not least, I'll pass it over to Jean. Take it away, please.
Thank you very much, Sydney. It's a privilege to be with all of you today, and I'll be talking about the key leadership competencies in the public service of Canada. So you see them on the screen here, the key leadership competencies. These are all competencies that you will find on many job postings for leadership positions as essential qualifications. And what's interesting here is the government of Canada is giving you these in advance in terms of you have access to these. The Treasury Board has them along with guides and effective behaviors on their webpage. So I invite you all to go consult that. I won't go through them each individually. However, these are really great guides, and I like to pair them with the Values and Ethics Code, as well as the core mandate for your department. Collectively, those three documents put you on a really nice track when it comes to, achieving good results for Canadians, really, in the end, and being effective in your career. So, as possibly newer public servants, you may be asking yourself, well, these seems like my director's expectations. What might be expected of my director? Why are KLCs important for me? Well, I'm here to tell you that these don't only apply to your director, but can be used to guide your behavior at any level of government. And one thing that I know, I learned very early on in my career, and I continue to believe today, that you should seek to learn the skills and competencies before you actually need them in your career progression. A great place to practice. I guess the best place to practice your key leadership competencies today is, in fact, in the position that you are, regardless of what that is. And you can really gain a lot from that. And also be comfortable before you're actually faced with the challenges of being a director, or leading a major initiative for the government of Canada or something like that. These things are experiences. They are built with what you've experienced in your career, and what you've learned in various career development. I'll also say that we have, as a very, very proud public servant myself, I do consider it a true privilege to serve serve Canada and serve Canadians. I really believe that helping others is one of life's greatest sources of fulfillment. So, as public servants, we have an opportunity to help so many people, and what I will tell you is that if you apply the key leadership competencies in your daily approach to work, you'll find even more joy. You'll find even more happiness in opportunities to help others. And then the side benefit is, if you do find yourself in a leadership position at one point, armed with that practice and these key leadership competencies being part of your daily routine, you'll be ready for the challenges that you might face. The last key concept, and for those that are looking for tips on career progression itself, the government of Canada essentially is giving you an open book test on key leadership competencies. They're here, they're there, they're everywhere. You can find them, as I mentioned, on the Treasury Board website, with comprehensive guides. It's really the tip of the iceberg. You can dig much deeper on creating vision and strategy, on collaborating with partners. This is really just a springboard for you to then go and build your own experience and build your own effective behaviors, build your own tools when it comes to that. Find the mental models that allow you to promote innovation at work. Those things. And you can tailor your leadership development activities around these things. You may, because you're preparing for, and I'll tell you, this is something that I've done multiple times in my career. I might pick up a book that's related to mobilizing people, to creating vision, because I know that these are things that are important for my current role and help prepare me for my next role also. So the last piece related to the KLCs, I do highly encourage depth and breadth of experience early in a career. I find that is something that's really served me well. So, like Dima, I came up through the HR stream, and I did everything. I did every type of HR work that you can dream of. every challenge that comes about. I volunteered for, trying to be someone who helps with the difficult problems that we face. And those experiences have really made me a much more effective leader. They've also helped me make connections between different concepts that might come about in one sense and can be transposed to another. So having that range, I think, makes me an effective leader today, and one that is able to be effective in a variety of different scenarios because of that breadth early on in my career. So there you go, key leadership competencies.
Thank you so much, Shal. And I think a key point of what you spoke about, especially for young and new who might not be in a leadership role, but who are aspiring to that, is really to seek to learn the competencies that the next role is that you're going to be applying to. And one of the best pieces of advice I got was just go to GC Jobs, find a role that you're trying to apply for, look at the competencies that are highlighted there, and then seek the experience out too, so that you have evidence that you've achieved that experience. And for anyone who's interested in learning more about the key leadership competencies, Justine put them just in the chat there, and there's some really great examples that outline what each of these more general terms are referencing, including examples, and it's very helpful to understand. So thank you so much, Shal. And just before we go into the Q&A, on the next slide here, we have some additional learning opportunities that you can seek out to get these extra experiences that perhaps you might not get in your substantive. So for instance, you could seek out mentorship opportunities. So the Federal Youth Network hosts in-person learning days with speed mentoring. There's also interdepartmental events like Mega Connects that offer speed mentoring opportunities that give you the opportunity to network with a whole bunch of different execs from across the government of Canada, from a whole bunch of different levels. So you can ask a whole bunch of questions. There's also general learning opportunities within the government of Canada itself. Again, Finn, like we offer events like this. There's also the National Managers Community if you want more leadership specific resources. And then of course, we have the Canada School of Public Service, which offers courses that you can do on the side of your desk at your own time when you can. In addition to in-person workshops. So there's a whole bunch of resources you can consult there, and I encourage you to look and potentially talk to your manager about engaging in some of those. There's also university courses that you can do. Something that I didn't learn until later on, a couple of years into my career, is that all public servants have a certain amount of training funding that can be put towards them. So if there's a specific course that you're interested in, it might be worth having that conversation with your manager if they'd be willing to support you financially in doing that course so that you can apply it to your job and learn more from it and become a more developed public servant as a result for both your team and just in general. There's also the Take Me With You initiatives. And so those are generally offered by department. And that's essentially where senior executives will bring along young professionals to their meetings and sort of a job shadowing relationship. So you can see firsthand what it's like as an executive and ask questions along the way. So keep an eye out in your respective departments for those types of initiatives, generally run by the Young Professionals Networks, which it kind of goes into the next point there with the GC communities and networks. So as I mentioned in my introduction, I'm the co-chair of the NCR-YPN, so the co-chair of the National Capital Region Young Professionals Network. And previously I was very heavily involved in the Health Canada Public Health Agency of Canada's Young Professionals Network. And that's where I really got the majority of my leadership experience, because in my substantive, I'm just a policy analyst, a mid-level analyst. I have a supervisor and a manager and a director, that I report to, but I like to say in the YPN world, I'm a little bit of a big fish, but it gives me a good opportunity to get that leadership experience with less pressure, so to speak. And you're with a group of people who are really passionate about the work that they do. So I encourage you all to keep an eye out, perhaps go and seek out the Young Professionals Network within your department or agency. And if not, the Federal Youth Network is here and has a ton of opportunities that you can get involved, including regional networks like the NCR-YPN. And then there's additional communities, there's working groups, there's just within your directorate or your division that you could get involved in. And generally, managers want to promote workplace wellness. And so bringing these opportunities forward to your manager, especially if it's a situation where you can demonstrate that you can do this alongside your substantive work. For the most part, hopefully your manager will be supportive. Evidently, if not, there are some other conversations to be had, but for the most part, we're all one public servant and we want to have the best situation, the best competent folks for the public. And then lastly, of course, there's conference opportunities. So there's IPAC, which I'm blanking on what it stands for, but it's a an association for public servants, and it has, similar to Fin, it has a lot of events, conferences, resources that you can reference, both for free or for a paid membership fee. There's conferences like the Art of Leadership for Women. There's Apolitical. There's events, conferences that are run by Young Professionals Networks. Again, both free and paid. And if it is a situation where it's paid, that's also something that you could approach your manager if you can demonstrate that it shows value for your organization. But anyway, just a few learning opportunities to help you kind of implement some of what our panelists have been speaking about in a more concrete way. So with that, I'll stop there. We're just going to turn now to the questions from the audience, because we're getting a lot of interaction, which is really great because we have a really great group of folks here with a lot of experience. So please just remember that you can vote for the question that you like the most by using the thumbs up function. Just go to the Q&A tab at the bottom and then thumbs up the questions that you like. But we will get right into it. So please answer the questions as quickly as possible, panelists, so that we can cover as many as possible. I'll ask the question and then I'll turn to one or more of you to answer. If you wish to add on to something and I haven't turned to you specifically, just please raise your hand and I'll pass it over to you. And any resources that are mentioned will be shared on our wiki page after the event. So with that, the first question that we have here is, any tips to break out of the at-level trap? I'm ready to move positions at the next classification up after having several lateral opportunities, but unfortunately, it seems like there are not many opportunities for actings or promotions these days, especially in the sciences, as many promotions are often advertising for at-level only and aren't open to promotional opportunities, appointments, or actings, even if you might otherwise be less qualified for the role. So perhaps, Bridget, I can turn that over to you to start, because you spoke a lot about moving within the government. And then if anyone wants to add on to that, please feel free to raise your hand.
Great. No, thank you so much. And what a great question. I personally suffered from this at-level trap for about 5 years. I was stuck as an AS for a good amount of time. And then I went over to being an EC after finally winning an acting competition. And what really helped me in that was I had a really amazing supervisor and a manager, and both of them really believed that I was ready to move on. I think the challenge with that is that not everyone has that. Not everyone has those people who can believe in them and who can strive in it. So what I would suggest for this is, try to find those people in your network. Try to go out there and really put yourself, it's definitely scary to do in that level. Kind of, you're stuck at this and you're thinking, why? Also, just try to find someone who can believe in you. It helped me. I've had a number of opportunities as a result of, someone just reaching out to me, hey, we worked on this together a few years ago. Or, you can also do that. You could reach out to someone and say, hey, we've worked together in the past. Do you have any other opportunities that might be within your organization that might be of interest? It is definitely a scary thing to do, to reach out. It's one of those things where you're going to be like, oh no, they might not think that I'm ready for this, but you really could be. And you just have to ask yourself, are you actually in a trap as well? Sometimes we think we're trapped in it, but maybe you're just not finding the right jobs that are working for you, and maybe you're dreaming of being an EC because you think EC is where it's at. But I've gone back between AS and EC. I've been a PM. I've been a CR. I've been through most of the gamut. And honestly, it really just comes down to the position, and it comes down to the people that are surrounding you in those positions. So, I think the biggest thing is just network. Continue meeting people. Continue putting your name out there. Continue applying. I know it's a challenge. I know it's a grind, but if you're not getting the right answers, maybe just, pivot your approach or answer a question differently the next time you're in an interview, or kind of maybe do a different type of, analysis of where you're at and where you want to be. And maybe you'll realize that there are opportunities another type of lateral that will then get you up. But you just kind of have to kind of leapfrog and don't lose patience. I know it can be really, really hard, but keep reaching out, and really, I do think finding someone who advocates for you is a big one for this. I don't know, Sydney.
That's an excellent answer. And actually, before we go on to the next question, I'd actually kind of like to send you back with another follow-up question, because a lot of the time we have great recommendations on, network, get a mentor, talk to other folks. But how do you actually do that, especially as a young professional? And perhaps, Jean, you have some insight as well as a director that you can speak to. How do you like to be approached in engaging in, for example, a mentorship opportunity? Or Bridget and Dima, as managers, is there a way to versus not to approach someone if you are interested in their job position? So maybe I'll start with Dima, and then I'll pass it to Bridget, and then I'll pass it to Jean.
So maybe a very quick advice. I don't like when people come and say, would you be my mentor? It's like you need people to help themselves so that you can help them. And I feel that a great way to do that is to tell them what is it about the job or the business, about their experience that they're interested in. Be very specific. And when you're asking yourself very specific questions, you know exactly what you're looking for in a mentorship. Sometimes we look up for someone just because they're in a higher position or a senior position, but we don't really know why we want to work closely with them or them mentoring us. So ask yourself the question, what is it about them, about the work that they do that I really enjoy? And then tell them, I really enjoy that you're working on this file, and I'd like to know more about this file. Can you spare me 30 minutes a week? It's also very important to be specific about what is the time commitment, because these people are very busy. But if you tell them, I only need half an hour from you a week, you've already help with their stress level, because for them it's another thing on their calendar. So be specific about the experience that you're interested in and the time commitment that you would like from that person.
That's excellent. Yes. And really emphasizing the aspect of what do you want out of it? Just going to someone, the executive often is more than willing to help you, but you really want to maximize their time because they're busy folks. So having that kind of idea of what you want to talk about and the time committed is a really great piece of advice. Bridget, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, sure. The only thing that I would add here is I think you really need to develop a personal relationship with this person in some aspect. And I say that not like, you need to go over to their house or whatever, but I think you need to get to know them, and they need to get to know you. And there needs to be that level of kind of trust and commitment that, you really are committed to this and mentorship. There used to be a Facebook page. I believe there still is on mentorship. And I've actually mentored a few people, and I did it for about a 2-year period where I just met a few different people, and I connected with some, and some I didn't quite connect with, but it was really just kind of exploring that relationship and getting to know people. And, Dima made an excellent point. Why do you reach out to that person? Why do you think that is it? I mean, sometimes you think that person is going to be able to help you, but in the reality, you might not be the best fit. So it's just kind of like trying things out a little bit. For me personally, I had a great supervisor and a manager who they then believed in me because they saw my work every single day. So sometimes you just need to maybe find a different supervisor and a manager. Maybe there are ways to kind of get those people who really believe in you, who are in your corner. And it kind of goes, I believed in them and they believed in me. And there was a little bit of that trust exchange that started to happen. And this doesn't happen immediately. Don't go out tomorrow and say, I'm going to get a mentor and they're going to solve all my problems. It's going to take 6 months, a year, 2 years to really build those relationships. And I know where I currently work. I work in the president's office. They do mentorship here at that level, but it's not a quick little easy in and out. It is a time commitment, and you really have to believe in that, and you have to commit to it as well. Not just expect them to, but you have to really commit. So yeah, that's kind of where I would just leave it for now.
No, that was excellent. And I think also part of that is to don't be afraid of rejection. Someone might say, I don't have time, or I don't think I'm the good fit, but you can also always ask them if they have a recommendation of someone they should speak to based on your interests, because you can leverage their networks as well. So keep that in mind. And Jean, as our director in-house from the EX level, if you have anything you'd like to add, please go for it.
Yeah, I'll be brief, and that would actually correspond to my first piece. Being concise in what you're asking, I think, is really important, right? Being clear, like I love this Canada School of Public Service offers this learning event called the 2-minute briefing. Well, you have to master that if you're engaging with executives for the most part, because sorry, I shouldn't say it. Like executives, yes, we are busy, but we do have time, and we make time for people. But in order for us to be able to have as much time supporting as many people as possible, having a nice concise presentation. You're looking for mentoring. What are your current career aspirations? Where are you trying to go in your career? What your asks are. Really, really important. And the other piece that I don't think we can circle around is adding value where you are now, right? Like I find, like, generally speaking, and there's a few questions that I'm seeing here about micro missions and things like that, but for people that are adding value to whatever business line that they're currently in, um, it's a really important stepping stone to finding a mentor, finding the next career progression. Um, it seems old school, but if your job is to count toothpicks, well, be the best toothpick counter that there is. Adding value, finding a better way of approaching things, and making those things known. If you think something could be done better, propose it, right? Like, have the courage to put yourself out there as someone who has a potential solution to something. I think that's a really important and sometimes undervalued way to approach career progression.
And I think that's a really great point, Jean, because I think as young and new professionals, sometimes we feel we're meant to be seen, but not necessarily heard. But it's important to remember that you were hired for a reason, and you have your own unique experiences and perspectives that your management wants to hear from you. So it's important to speak up. And of course, there might be situations where it's not as fostered, but for the most part, your director, your manager, they want to know what your thoughts are. And I've heard from other colleagues that they've actually been told by their manager that they want to hear them contribute more. So if it's not something you're currently doing, give it a try. What have you got to lose? The worst thing they can say is no.
Another plug for the key leadership competencies. It is part of mobilizing people, engaging in career discussions, right? So if your managers and directors are modeling the key leadership competencies, this is part of it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all. So I'm going to move on to the next question here. I'm going to kind of combine a couple so we can hopefully hit a few, but a telltale classic question that we tend to get is, how long should someone stay at a job before moving on to the next level? And can you also share your experience on effectively expanding your professional network, perhaps so you can consider, when is it right to have that job moving, and any tips, especially when navigating virtual options? And perhaps, Bridget, I can start with you on that one.
Sure. No. So for how long you should stay in a career, I know a job, this might surprise people, but 18 months. It's a very specific number. But the reason I say 18 months is because you'll see a full year cycle. You'll get to see the full development of start to finish what we do in a fiscal year, and then the extra 6 months leading up to that and kind of going out of that. In those 18 months, you will most likely touch on all of the things that you're going to have to come up in terms of a challenge. It's very specific, like I said, but in my experience, I've been a policy analyst, I've been an administrative assistant, I've worked in many different organizations, and in that period of time, you really do encounter a lot of different things. And the biggest thing is leaving too early of an opportunity, or thinking you're ready for the next level, thinking I've been at this job for, a month now, 2 months, 6 months, and you know everything. You probably don't know everything. There's probably a lot left to learn. So just kind of give yourself a little bit of time and space, and the risk of moving up too early is that you will miss out on a lot of those foundational skills that you do need in the job and at the level. And you'll find yourself potentially one day asking yourself, I don't know if I'm fully capable of doing this job in everything that's being expected of me. Or the outcome is, I don't actually like this job that I'm doing or where I found myself, and you've moved up too quickly. So really take the time to learn, to do all of those things, to kind of go in and out of all of the cycles of what government is. It's a pretty cyclical job in most cases. And you will kind of get those foundational skills down that you will need and your supervisors will look for and your directors will look for. And to Jean's point, the key leadership competencies, those are, again, they take time to develop. It's not overnight, but taking a good amount of time to do those jobs is what you need. And it will benefit you in the long run.
Excellent. I'm not seeing any hands up by my other panelists. So, Jean, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add a bit there, simply to say that in my experience, 18 months, I like that number. However, at the 18-month point, if you're in a complex and dynamic environment and you're looking to really instill transformative change into an organization, that's kind of the starting point. I would say 12 to 18 months, that's where you have a sufficient grasp of the overall complexity and context that you're in. And that's where some of these opportunities to really make transformative change come about, whether that is through micromissions at level assignments that are really a progression in responsibility and those types of things, like these things that are career defining sometimes. That 18-month point, I like it, and that might be the point where that real career progression opportunity will present itself, even though it might be a lateral or a micro mission.
Absolutely. And I love when this conversation comes up, because I myself, I've been with my team for 5.5 years, the same team, 5.5 years, but I've sought out additional opportunities by splitting my time between two teams twice. So I had different experience within the same file. I volunteered with the Young Professionals Network, both my departmental one and now the NCR one. I've sat on different committees. So there's different ways that you can get different experience and meet new people. And then that also helps expand your network at the same time. But just before we move on, there's another question, Jean, because you kind of started to talk about micromissions, that how do you even go about finding them? And if you have advice on, secondments and assignments, both advertised and not advertised, perhaps you can speak a bit about that as well.
Well, I'll start with the micromission. So in my experience, and this might be unique to me in the environments that I've been in, please recognize that in this answer. But most of the micromissions have come out of people proposing solutions to organizational problems that are lacking in attention. That coming to my attention, and then me saying, "You're right, we have to do this," and then the chips fall in line with timing, funding, etc. And then I can go back to that person and say, "You're going to fix it. You told me you wanted to fix it. Let's go." Micro mission. And I'd say that's probably happened to me 6 times. Whereas other micro missions, there are some that are advertised as micro missions, so keep an eye out for those as well. But oftentimes it's that unique solution that's proposed, and that because of what you've gained in terms of your competencies and your experience, that you're someone who can contribute to making it better.
Yes, absolutely. And that kind of comes back to the career leadership. Promote innovation. How can you make the organization that you're in a better place and ultimately professionally develop at the same time? Excellent. Thank you for that. And I think we kind of talked a little bit about switching. Bridget, you kind of talked about switching all over the place between different classifications. So someone is specifically asking how they could transfer between classifications, because there tends to be a stereotype in favor of certain classifications over the others. So how does one go about preparing themselves for that transition? What considerations should they have when wanting to make that transition, or any limitations, or any advice that you have along those lines?
All I can say is being an EC isn't everything. Just to be really clear, I am an EC, but I have served about half my career as an AS and some parts of it as a PM. I've been a CR. We'd love to use these little acronyms and think that they define everything about us. But I will just say for this specific person, an AS5 does have a lot of really similar competencies as an EC4, just a little bit different in terms of where they're viewed at. So I think maybe some of the challenges is managers not recognizing that there are transferable skills to this. This might be a problem more at managers, not necessarily you. It's not you. Sometimes it's just, it's the wrong job or the wrong fit or the wrong team that you're applying for, that you're going for. I have really made that transition, but it took a lot of work. It took a significant amount of time and dedication on my part. I took a micro mission, I took an assignment, I then took an acting, and then I finally won a competition. This took about 2 years of me going from an AS1 to an EC4. And it wasn't easy. And it was a long-term commitment of mine. And now I've kind of caught up to where I want to be, but it kind of links in. And I'll just say there's another question about the hardest career move I ever had to make. It was moving from an AS to an EC. And then I moved back to an AS. And I moved back to an AS because I realized there's not everything about the position that I was in as an EC that fit my need, that fit what I was going for. So really, really look at what the position you're looking for is. There are AS5s that have very different types of job commitments as an EC, and there's EC work that tends to be a bit more PM and AS oriented. So it's not all kind of one size fits all model. So I really, just think about what you're looking for. Like to somebody, I think looking up a job poster, seeing what that is, seeing how it transfers over, and just kind of really trying to target some job opportunities or micro missions, assignments, laterals that could help build out some of those gaps in your career. So I think that's it in terms of where I would go for that one specifically.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate something that you said because it applies to me as well, is that just because you're a certain classification doesn't mean that's necessarily the stereotypical role that you do. So I'm a policy analyst, but I work in cannabis public education producing national resources. So not a whole heck of a lot of policy analysis that's exactly happening, and that can apply for other classifications as well. So don't just look at the classification and assume that your role is going to be a certain way, because also, as the other panelists were saying, you can kind of make it what you want it to be as long as you advocate for yourself. So thank you for your comments, Bridget. And I'm going to we have time for one more question. So I'm going to kind of combine a couple here. So kind of going off of the hardest career decision that you ever had to make, did you think you made the right decision? And perhaps if it had to do with a manager that was providing or not providing opportunities for you, how did you go about handling that situation so that it still ended up in sort of your best interest, or did you have to just walk away? So maybe perhaps I'll start with Dima there.
Yes, and I want to start by going back to what Bridget was saying, and I love that she said it doesn't matter if you're an AS and EC, it really doesn't matter. This goes back to when we started the presentation today. It's really a shiny object. I promise you, it will not bring you happiness. It will not bring you fulfillment. It doesn't matter what the job title is or the classification. Make sure that you are contributing in a meaningful way. Like really keep asking yourself, how can I contribute in a meaningful way? And how can I add joy to what I'm doing? I think this is really the key. And for the question about the hardest career decision, I think it's very easy to answer this question in hindsight. But I think that the lesson is yes, the lesson is in hindsight, but on the spot, if you're going through a period in your career now where you feel you have to take a hard decision, really find some quiet time and look inside you for the answers. Don't waste time on titles and classification. Just reflect internally, trust your intuition, and it will lead you maybe to the right career move, or if not, to a very valuable lesson. So don't be scared, take chances. There will be a lesson or a great opportunity either way. Just trust your gut feeling. I'm not sure if there was another question in this that I've totally missed, Sydney.
No, you hit them both. So thank you so much for that. And I'm also just noting the time, and I do want to remind folks that the LinkedIn information of our friends and panelists here will be included in the chat if it hasn't already been. So if you do have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to them. I mean, they're here, so they're eager to help you learn. Wink, wink. But with that, I do want to just launch one last final polling question for you folks before you sign off. And the results will not be shared. We just want to know whether this session was a good use of time for you. Yes, no, I don't know. And we do just want to extend one last time a huge thank you for joining us today. This concludes our final session of our virtual learning series, Start Your Career the Right Way. Although this series has ended, we have plenty of other learning events for you. The Federal Youth Network will be hosting in-person learning days across the country throughout the year, so keep an eye out for those. We've actually added some new cities to our schedule, and you can find out if we're coming near you by checking out the list of cities and dates on our wiki page. Registration is free, so here's an example of an event that you can take advantage of that's free. And you don't want to miss the opportunity to network with people in person in your city. Also, join us every Tuesday from June 11th to June 13th for our departmental showcase, where you can hear about cool jobs, common role responsibilities, and bust misconceptions from future leaders in their departments. It's just the beginning of an exciting adventure for you and a great way for you to learn about other opportunities that are out there. And lastly, just a reminder that resources are available on our wiki page, and the recording of this event will be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you hugely to our panelists and to all of our learners who continue to take their career in their own hands and take the time to invest in your future selves. We'll see you all again very soon, and we thank you for your continued support of the Federal Youth Network. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.